All right, everyone. Welcome back to Strange Stories with the Seeker and the Skeptic. I'm Jonathan. I'm the Skeptic.
I'm Brittany. I'm the seeker.
And this evening or morning or 3 o'clock or whenever it is that you're actually consuming this, we will be speaking with and hearing from Aaron Gaff, author of the Simple Book of Tarot and professional tarot guy. Aaron, how's it going?
Doing great. How's everybody doing?
Doing good.
We're
Doing
doing
good.
well.
So, just to kind of dig right in, just as far as your background goes, how did this start for you? Like, how did you begin this tarot journey?
Well, even when I was younger, I just always was drawn to more of the metaphysical type things, the fringe areas of life, and I just always had this question. I wanted to seek something more than what we see just with our eyes, and so early on, I just was really drawn to the occult and TV shows and things of that nature. Anything that would kind of make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. Those things just drawn were drawn to me. And so, as far as with tarot goes, I mean, I was always in like the occult sections in our local bookstores, and I'd always stumble upon these box of tarot cards, and I'd always pick them up and kind of look at them, and it just seemed like it was going to be overly complicated. And then eventually, in the mid '90s, I decided to pursue it.
What did that look like for you in terms of like learning how to read tarot?
Well, it was really complicated. I noticed right away that I mean there was so much esoteric knowledge, and there was symbolism, and then there was reading upright and reverse, and there was just a lot of information to dig into, and so it was complicated. At the time, I mean, now we have so many resources. You have YouTube, and you have so much more online presence. But back then, it was a dial-up modem, and it was an effort to even get to do any research. So I was limited to whatever books that they had at the bookstores, and I don't even remember the name of the first one I got, but the little white book that came with the cards itself, I read that and pretty much memorized it, and then I would pick up any book I could after that and just try to learn as much as I possibly could. But it just seemed so complicated. It took me a very long time to really have a decent understanding without having to pull out my own little tarot journal, and these awkward conversations with people who wanted a reading or they wanted anything. I'd be like, well, hold on, let me see what this means. Let me see what this means. And so that was probably the first year, 2 years of me reading.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. I've dabbled in tarot, from time to time, but there are so many different interpretations and there's so much symbolism, just built into it that learning it's quite a process for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it almost seems like a lot of the stuff. Well, I mean, you can definitely tell a lot of stuff is written kind of in an obfuscation mode. Like they want you to have like people from kind of the before times who wrote this older stuff kind of wanted you to have more experience with different things, and then it's almost like you have to have like a precursor to the tarot stuff.
Yeah, I
So
agree to that. Yeah, it helps that if you studied into a lot of like, I mean, especially, I mean, like if you look at the Rider Waite Smith tarot deck, I mean there's a lot of Judeo-Christian influence just in the imagery um on that deck of cards. I mean, throughout, I mean, even you have the devil, and you have the Adam and Eve, and the images of the lovers card. I mean, all these things. I mean, they definitely, yeah. It helps if you have some sort of prior knowledge before digging into it. Sure.
What were some of the resources that you found to be like the most helpful?
Um. Well, like I said, I mean, I really looked into the little white book, and then the first handful of books. I mean, I don't even remember who wrote them. I mean, I want to say there was one author named Emily Peach. I think she was the author of the very first book, but I couldn't even tell what the name of that book is. I no longer have it. But then Rachel Pollack, her book, 78 Degrees of Wisdom. That book was a great resource, and so that one I used that one quite a bit. But my biggest for me to help me to process the information and memorize the cards and develop my own style of reading it really was about breaking each one of these cards down, learning basic numerological like meanings for like 1 through 10. I mean, just really stripping it down and making it simple. That really helped me, and then essentially writing out my journal. I remember pretty much anything if I write it down. It's just how I process information, and so that was a big resource for me. But now there's some, I mean, there's great books. I mean, since in the last probably 5-10 years, I mean, you have like Benabel Wen's Holistic Tarot. I mean, that is to me, I mean, that's probably one of the authoritative books on the tarot now. It's very, very complete. It's a very dense book, but it's excellent. Um, and there's other ones. I mean, I don't know if you guys have heard of someone named Vincent Petici. He actually, one of the decks of cards that I love using, his Black Keys card. I use that on occasion. He's based out of Chicago. He has a great YouTube channel, great YouTube presence. He's written books. His Bare Bones Tarot. He just, I think, he released that a couple of years ago, but that book is also excellent.
Awesome. And so you've written a book, so tell us a little bit about your book and the process to creating that.
Yeah. So the real reason that I wanted to write the simple book of tarot was I wanted something that essentially stripped out the esoteric symbolism and all the almost the secret society private club that tarot kind of is. With you have these professional readers who have this so much of the, well, this can't mean this or this can mean this, and it's just so much of that. And I just wanted to create something that if I were brand new to tarot and I wanted a book to just introduce me to the bare foundations of what tarot is. And so I wanted to create something that, if one of my kids want to learn tarot, they could pick up a book and get a general idea on how to read the tarot without having to learn, reversal cards and what this symbol means, and astrology and all these other things that like for whatever reason gets associated with tarot. And that stuff can be great. I mean, that stuff can add depth to readings, and I know readers who do. They apply that stuff, and years ago I got into some of that stuff myself, and I just found that if I read basic, just removed all of that from my reading style, that my readings were still very good, very accurate, very helpful without all that. And so I wanted to write a book so that somebody could maybe start reading the tarot and not be so overwhelmed with all this extra information that, quite frankly, in my opinion, you don't really need to read the cards.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And when Jonathan and I kind of started this journey and he started getting interested in tarot, I told him like point blank, I refuse to read reversals because it just overcomplicates it. And to me, there's so many cards that could have that meaning that if that's the message that's meant to come out, that card will come out. Like that's the intention I have, is just like, I'm not dealing with reversals.
No, absolutely. In the beginning, again, I was overwhelmed because I first started reading the cards, and I just wanted to learn them so desperately, and more for just going to parties with my friends and stuff, like, hey, Aaron brought his cards, that kind of thing, and I got to that point, but yeah, initially with all the symbolism, reversals, and I was overwhelmed at first. And I mean, I learned everything I possibly could, and I did read the reversals for a while. My method for reading, though, was a little different than some. For me, when a card was reversed and it would come up initially, it would still hold the same meaning that the original card would have if it was upright. It was just reduced, almost as though the energy was somehow being obstructed by something. And then throughout the reading, depending on the spread that I had in place, that would reveal why that card would be reversed.
That's a
So
very interesting approach to reversals that I haven't heard anybody talk about before. I like that.
Yeah, it's very interesting for sure.
with that, I read that somewhere, and I wish I knew where. But I've also since then I've met a couple other readers who also had that same method for reading, and it's a lot simpler way of reading reversals than what a lot of the other ways are.
Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned just kind of briefly about spreads, and that kind of takes into an interesting mechanic, in my opinion, is that there are just as there are very, very many ways that you can look at a card and have an idea of what it would mean. There's also a bunch of different ways that you can make a tarot spread. There's a different number of cards. Sometimes, some people prefer certain patterns of cards. They put different cards, however it comes off the deck, they put it in a different location. Do you have a preferred method in that?
In the beginning, I played around with certain ways that I let the person I'm reading for cut the deck, or um, not. But now, no, I really don't. And I don't do the they'll. I've heard people say, well, if you use the card on the underside of the deck means something, and I don't do any of that. I shuffle the cards, and after I shuffle them, I place them down in whatever spread I'm deciding to use at the time, and so I don't have any special, cut the deck 3 times, once to the left, the right, and I don't do any of that. So
How do you think it works? Like what's behind the tarot cards?
yeah, well, that's a complicated, multifaceted answer, but I'll do my best. So personally, I believe that tarot works because essentially we want it to is partially the answer. I mean, it's like anything. It's like if people who read their every day and it's like, oh, this really resonates with me. I mean, part of it is that they want it to work for them, and so so there's that element to it. But the other is at least how I read the cards. I don't. First of all, I believe in free will. Okay, I don't believe that there is destiny. I don't believe there's fate. I believe that we are in charge of our outcomes, and so when I read the tarot, I use it as a tool for guidance. So many times I'll get a question where somebody will say, when will I meet my soulmate, or will I get the job? And instead of that, I feel that to really benefit for what tarot is, it should be how to questions. How can I better, attract the person I'm meant to be with? How can I, better improve my odds of getting this job? And the tarot is a very useful and effective tool when you utilize it for that purpose. The tarot can answer those other questions, but again, when we do that and we try to force some fate-driven will into the cards, where we say things like, "When will I fall in love?" The cards will answer that question, but then later on they'll go out and then suddenly that didn't happen for you the way you thought it would. And so you can explain that off as a tarot reader and say, well, it's because you now had that knowledge, and as soon as you know that, now you go off and you change the vibrations of the universe, and so it didn't get you didn't get the outcome you wanted. So I mean, you can explain it off in that way, and maybe that's true. But I believe that tarot works because we want it to work. And if you ask 10 different tarot readers, I think you get probably 10 different answers of why it works. I think it works because we want it to work.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that energy is involved in it at all? Like responding to the person's energy?
I do believe so. I do believe that there is a higher power as well. So I think that, I mean, if we believe that there is, a God or something at the center of the universe, or whatever you want to, whatever label you want to put on it. I mean, if we're sending out prayers, why can't that same entity that we're praying to, why can't that entity not somehow help drive a tarot reading? I mean, there'd be definitely have that ability to affect that. So
For sure. Yeah, I definitely resonate with what you were saying of like the way to ask questions. I work with spiritual guides and in the Akashic records, and I really try to stay away from should questions, because I don't think that guides or God or the universe is like, you should do this. Like, there's a pathway for anything. It's really like, how do I want to align my energy, right? And that's exactly what you were saying, is like, how do I call in that perfect match for myself, if that's what you're wanting, instead of when or who, those types of questions. It's really about, how do I get myself into alignment to create this reality?
absolutely. It's funny you said should questions. My boss at my day job says, "Be careful with should questions, or you're should all over yourself."
Yeah, I say that very frequently. I'm like, don't should on yourself. That's
Right.
funny.
Definitely with you on the free will, and all that makes a lot of sense to me personally. And that really even goes into, a lot of different, like, other practices that are considered to be more on, the esoteric spectrum, kind of like, people like, magicians like Crowley talked about will a lot. And I think a lot of times those statements are kind of brushed off as like, oh, he's just being creepy Crowley. But in reality, you know, do what you will is you use your willpower, figure out what your will is and use your willpower to change your reality. And that's the basis of what actual like ritual magic is supposed to do. And that's the same thing. Why is it not that way with cards? It makes perfect sense to me, man.
Sure. Absolutely.
Have you had any like really interesting experiences where you've done a reading for yourself or somebody else that's kind of changed what we're talking about, changed the course of, the energy?
Yes. And I have to be careful with some of that because I am very much a believer in complete client confidentiality. However, I've had a client not long ago uproot their life and move to a different country overseas. And I'm not saying that it was based off of a tarot reading, but later on, I was called out and said, "Man, that reading completely upended my life," And it's like, well, I mean, no, you did that, but the reading maybe gave you, a map to help, I guess. But so that was a year ago that's happened, and then for myself, yeah, actually, the real reason that and I shouldn't say it's the reason I got into reading, because I've always kind of was interested with the cards, but back in the 90s, I was in kind of a toxic relationship, and I just had this eking suspicion that it wasn't going the way that that I was hoping it would go, and so the cards kind of gave me a heads up, and this is where I feel that the subconscious mind really plays a huge part in the tarot, and helps us to face things maybe we don't want to see. Maybe we have more information in our mind, but emotional attachments. We like to set up our blinders so we don't want to deal with pain or certain aspects of life, and the tarot kind of puts that in your face in a big picture, and realizing that, oh, wait a minute, this is really what's going on. So
Absolutely. I've had those experiences more so with oracle decks than I have with tarot cards, but just putting things in your face of like, oh,
yeah.
something needs to change here.
I mean, it kind of acts in a way. It's like the Rorschach test in some ways. You see and things come to life, and even the meanings for cards for me. I mean, for the most part, I have fairly rigid meanings for all the cards. But every now and then, if you put those cards in front of you, one will just jump out, and it's like, maybe this meaning is maybe, because I mean, the cards are meant to interact with each other. And so, the Hangman is one of my favorite cards. And the reason that it's one of my favorite cards is it always makes me think of playing a game of chess. And you think, oh, I got my opponent in checkmate coming up. And then suddenly you just didn't see that rook out there and your queen is gone, and it's that making that last fatal move, and the Hangman there reminds you. You always need to make sure that did you check everything? Maybe go over it one more time so you don't get your foot, hung up in a tree. So
Yep.
So do you have, and it's possible that favorite is not the right word, but do you have like a favorite card within the deck, or one that just resonates the most with you?
I suppose I guess that depends on what mood I'm in and maybe what's going on in my life. But I will say that wherever I go, I keep one card with me, and the card that I keep with me is the Wheel of Fortune. And the reason that I do, I prefer the Marseille deck myself personally, but I like all of them. I love all the unique tarot decks. There's so many creative people making new ones out there right now, but I like the Wheel of Fortune because no matter where you feel that you are in your life right now, if you are on the top of that wheel, got the best view, change is coming. I mean, you're not going to sit there. Life is fluid; it's constantly moving. But at the same time, if you're in a rut and you just feel like life is stagnant and there's nothing moving, it is moving, and your view is going to change. And so the Wheel of Fortune, I like that card because it reminds me that life is in constant motion. And so if life's going really good right now, then maybe it's a good time to prepare for what's coming, and life isn't going so good, better days are on the way. So, yeah, I'd
Mm,
say it's one of my favorite cards, I'd say.
yeah. The wheel is always spinning.
It is.
I like that.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the Marseille deck. I actually am about 50 pages into Alejandro Jodorowsky's book on the tarot.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that one?
I am familiar with it, but I've never read his book. I did read Ben Dove's book though.
Gotcha. Jodorowsky's one of the most is a very interesting guy. I don't he almost made a Dune film back in the 70s. He actually bankrupted a movie studio trying to do that. All of his movies are based on magic and weird stuff, and he spent years and years restoring the Marseille deck. If you like that deck, I think that it would be a real good read for you for sure.
Yeah, I saw that book, and then I ended up getting Ben Dove, which was actually a student of his, and so and he was a doctor in physics or something, I believe. But anyways, he I read his book, and it's an excellent book as well. But I haven't read the Jodorowsky's book, but it's one I should. Yeah.
You had mentioned a few minutes ago that, cards are meant to be read together, to kind of like tell that story. So, what does your process look like of putting the pieces together when you're doing a reading?
Well, I mean, it really depends. I mean, I have a few readings or I'm sorry, a few spreads that I like to use. The easiest one, and for me anyways, is just the 3 card spread. And the reason I find that so easy is because you can lay them out, and then if there's any one of those cards you think, well, that doesn't really fit, what is that there? You can just add another card to it, if you really want to. Although most of the time I can read the 3 card, but 3 cards is good, and it's usually it's kind of a past, present, future, which seems really basic, and it's kind of funny because in the last couple of years I've gone from trying to learn, trying to and then learning like a lot of symbolism and the astrology and numerology behind cards, and now I've kind of stripped it all back down again and kind of rebuilding just kind of from scratch. Um, and it's working out great actually. It's just I like the simplicity of it, but again, it's more like if you ask a question, it's like how can I be successful today at a certain project I'm working on at my day job? So I'll lay out like past, present, future, or more of it. It's more like an origin, an empowerment, and then maybe a positive sense of direction. And I'll lay the 3 cards out, and it gives me maybe some insight. And so every day, I know you guys see the readings I do every day, and it's for anybody, if they can find anything useful out of it, and that's great and stuff. It's mostly for fun, entertainment for myself, but that's actually my reading for myself that day, and so I'm actually using that for myself, and I just share it with everybody else. And um, but the 3 cards great. If you want more information, I'll do the Celtic Cross is a basic one, but I've really been experimenting with trying to find the perfect spread that will answer any question. The Celtic Cross basically will do that, but I've been trying to see what can I get away with the least amount of cards, but enough cards to answer any single question I could throw at them. And so I've got a 6 card spread that can do that, I think, pretty well, and I'll use that one a lot. And then I have a kind of a spiral shaped spread that I use, which the shape doesn't mean anything. It's just more for my entertainment. But it's 10 cards, but I've been trying to dial it down to really perfect the 6 card tarot spread that can answer any question. So,
Like it. Do you ever use oracle cards too, or are you just straight tarot?
yeah, I've only ever once had one oracle deck, and that was a long time ago. And I at the time I ended up giving it away. I couldn't. It just to me, and I think it's my I'm a little OCD. I'm a type A personality, so I think I need to have a certain amount of rules for me to be able to feel comfortable in. But I've seen people who use Oracle decks, and I love some of the art some of the Oracle decks are, and I wish I could just get into it. And maybe I'll try it again sometime. But as of right now, no, I don't read Oracle.
I've heard that from some people of like it's really nice to have like the structure of the tarot and like you said, like I mean, it can be very complicated, but you've been able to strip it down into something much more simplistic, you know. So I understand that resonating for sure.
Yeah, it's actually funny. You mentioned the posts. Actually, we found Aaron through Twitter X, whatever you want to call it. It was just one of those, like, every once in a while the system just the algorithm throws you an account that might be interesting to you. And I think I had like hashtagged tarot a couple days before. So here comes one of your posts, and I had been considering stepping back in my day job to give more time and effort towards some creative stuff I want to do. I've got a book I want to write. I'm getting into editing nonfiction, and possibly fiction too. I have an English degree and I know a lot about this stuff, but I kind of needed like kind of a pushing off point to really do it, because Brittany is very supportive. She's like, you can do this, this stuff, you can do it. But I was like, I want to step back and start this. And the first post of yours I ever saw was this 3 card spread, and your quote in it was just, that creative endeavor you're considering taking, do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fine,
Yeah.
okay. And that's when I started following you. And like, you know how it is. If you see people's posts, every few posts of someone you'll see, and for whatever reason, like every once a week or so, one of yours will show up, and it'll be an answer I already know to a question that I'm asking, but don't really want to admit to myself, kind of. And it's like, I gotta talk to this guy. That's why I reach out to you. I'm like, come talk to us on the podcast, because like it's always, and that's what tarot is. I think mostly to me is people more often than not know the things that they want to be doing and should be doing. But sometimes you need that, like that thing that's like not within your control, to be like, almost give you permission to do the things you should be doing.
Oh
And I
yeah.
think that can be that for people sometimes.
Yeah. Yo, I agree with that 100%. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, that's how I see tarot, honestly. I mean, there's some of the mystical and magical elements behind it, and and I can't explain everything about tarot, and I don't like when people put that thing where they're like, they say, well, this is exactly what tarot is, and I don't think tarot can fit. You know, I don't think tarot can fit in just one box. No pun intended. I think that a lot of things, and that's why I say I think that if you asked several readers, that all give you an exact, or a separate answer, and none of them are wrong. I think it works on multiple levels for multiple people for different reasons in different ways. But for me, it's more of a guidance tool. I mean, if it was something that could actually predict fate and stuff, I mean, we could find out who's going to be tomorrow's lottery winner and who's going to win the Super Bowl this year. And you might be able to dial it down a little bit and make a good guesstimation. But to me, for tarot, it's a guidance tool. It helps me to see
Yeah,
things that I need to see.
yeah, definitely agree with that. How much does your intuition come into play in your readings?
Um, Sometimes more than others. I think intuition's a very big part. I mean, even in the book that I wrote, I talk about observation. I mean, you can, I've read for people in front, right across from the table from me, and you can tell just when they come up to you that if they're vexed, they look stressed out. You realize that, oh, this person's at a 5, because numerology, you have 1 through 10, and all those numbers mean something. And so they come at you, they're looking like they're sad or they're going through something. You can tell this. So right then and there, they're 5. They're at a conflict in their life right now. Same thing. They come to you and they're like bubbly and they're talking about, they just met the love of their life and stuff. Well, they're at a 1 or a 2 in their life, and things are looking pretty great for them. So intuition's great. I mean, I think that it's I don't think you could really effectively read tarot without it, because you have to be able to, intuitively put the emotions and the question that you're asking into this card spread, and then make a story out of it to make it make sense. So intuition's a very big part.
So I don't think I've seen. I think maybe one time I've seen you repeat a deck. How many decks do you have? Do you even know?
Well, my wife was in the room a little bit ago. She's gone, so I can maybe answer this. Uh, it's a bit of an addiction for me, and Amazon's a horrible place because
Yeah.
oh, but I think right now the last time I actually set them out, I keep most of them in a safe, just because I have like probably 10 that I keep in my closet, in my go bag every day I take to work. I have a couple decks in there, and then in my safe I probably have 50 to 60 decks, so probably around 70, I think.
Oh.
That is impressive.
Last last year, and I know I had 66 then. So, and I know I bought several this year. So, yeah, I've got a lot. You know, and then after a while, I'll end up giving them away, or if a friend's starting to they're getting into tarot, I'll be like, oh well, you should try this deck, and it's like, well, I don't want to spend that money. I got you. Here, just you can have it. If I want another one, I'll buy it. So,
Awesome.
Aside from the I'm sorry, I think you called it the Marcel deck. Is that
Marseille, yeah.
Marseille? Okay. Aside from that, what are some of your other favorite decks that you have?
Um, well, the Vincent Patici Black Keys deck, it is a Marseille deck, but it's just his unique art style. He hand drew it, and it just had a lot of character to it. It's something about that deck I really like. There's also another one of my ones I go to here lately is actually I got it's the Wiser Tarot. It's interesting. It's a watercolor. It's the same RWS Rider Waite Smith deck. It's just they use watercolors to kind of reimagine it. I like that. It's just kind of a fresh perspective. But um, there's the Vintage Marseille by Lo Scarabeo. Lo Scarabeo is a publisher in Italy, and they're probably one of my favorite publishers of tarot decks, just because they're just very classic and clean. But they're vintage. They have a vintage RWS and vintage. I don't know what it is. A vintage is having like a unique moment right now where they're making these cards that look like they're old, but they're brand new. So you don't have to wear them out, and they just come that way. So it has a unique character, and you know, um, I try not to use the word resonate so much because I feel like it's sometimes overly used, but it resonates with me when I read. So it really does. It helps me a little bit more at ease. I like the imagery on it, and yeah, so I like both of those as well. So
Mhm. So I know we asked you about your favorite cards. Do you have any least favorite cards?
yes, I don't. Well, I'm not going to say that I want to say I don't like them. I don't like the decks where they try to get overly creative, and instead of saying, like I'm trying to think of an example of it. One of them is the movie Labyrinth.
Hmm.
Um, it is a theme deck, and I own it mostly because my wife loves the movie Labyrinth from her childhood. Um, and they instead of being like the suit of pentacles or suit of coins, they'll say like the suit of sprockets, or they try to change to be themed. And I get that and I can appreciate that, but from a professional reading standpoint, to me I find that extra element confusing. It's like, no, don't do that. Just keep it the way it is. So I don't prefer that. Um, Also, a long time ago, I learned how to read tarot with just a regular deck of poker cards, and so I can do readings with that. And every once in a while, someone will be like, "Hey, I got these, poker decks. Let's come do a reading." And it's like, I can do that, but the whole major arcana suit's not part of that. So you're just minor arcana. So I don't know, I mean, I'll do it for fun, but I don't particularly prefer reading that way. So there's that. But aside from that, I mean, anything anything that's weird or themed differently than most traditional cards, I guess I don't particularly prefer. And honestly, as much as I'm actually reading. It's funny you mentioned Carl. I'm actually reading his book, Magic Book 4, right now. Um, but I've never particularly cared for um, the Crowley deck. I never really could get into it too much. So, which is a little bit sacrilegious, I guess, in the tarot community.
I don't
So,
think so. You have that, right, Jonathan? That's
Yeah, I've got a stealth deck to the right of me right now. Yeah, but
I and it's not even broken in yet because I've only used it a few times years ago when I first bought it, and I just it's in my shelf just for reference, but
Yeah,
never got into it. So
not your thing. That's okay.
yeah.
What advice would you give somebody who wanted to start learning how to read tarot?
I would say keep it simple. Um, I would say to definitely not not get overwhelmed with all the symbols and reading reverse. Learn to read the cards upright. Learn what each card means, and not just from a textbook standpoint, but really allow. You mentioned intuition earlier, and that is a very big part of reading tarot. Allow your intuition to play a part in that too. What does the card make you feel? Because that's important. Because when you're reading tarot, eventually, what's going to happen is certain cards are gonna stick, and it's like a situation's happening, and you're gonna see this card, and eventually you're going to start those questions, and those meanings are just going to start happening for you. So how you want to interact with that and how you feel about those cards, that's an important part too, I feel. So that's something. But again, just try not to get tarot has a lot of moving parts, and so try to learn the basics and keep it simple as best as you can to begin with. I think that's going to give everybody the tools for success for learning tarot right out the bat. Because otherwise, what happens is a lot of people will start reading and they think they have to learn everything, and I got to be reading up to this level by this time, and I know this because I was that way. And luckily, I'm just stubborn and stuck with it. But a lot of people burned out, and they'll be like, you know what, this isn't for me, and they'll give up. So
Yeah. And you're right, things are different nowadays from, when you started learning, there wasn't a ton of resources, and now there's YouTube, there's a million books out there. Honestly, the way that I learned the best, like I had been trying to learn these cards, I've been trying to memorize them through reading books and stuff like that. And then like 2 years ago, I just started watching tarot readings on YouTube, and whether they resonated with me or not was one thing, but it was really like to help me figure out what the cards meant in each context. So that was a way that really helped me for sure.
oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. And that's people will recommend, it's like, oh, well, what book should I read, or what book should I read first, and all this stuff. Obviously, I'm always going to plug my book
Yeah,
naturally.
as you
But
should.
but what all joking aside, though, I mean, when they say which book should I read, and my answer is always, well, all of them. I mean, if you really love tarot, read them all. And I mean, I've probably read probably 40 books on tarot since I first started reading or more, and some were better than others, but I can't say that any single one book was ever bad. I mean, I think anything you can read into, and you can and learn something, even if you learned that maybe if you learned you didn't like that book, man, that's okay. But you learned that something new. So I think constantly growing, constantly just seeking, the knowledge and the wisdom in tarot. I mean, I'm constantly um, seeking wisdom and how to improve my life, how to be a happier and more functional human being on this planet. And I think that tarot plays a huge part in that. It helps you to, I since I've been reading tarot, I've never had an indecisive moment in my life, and so and I credit tarot for that. So I mean, it's a life changing thing for those who want to start out, and if they stick with it, I think it's very beneficial. So.
That's
Well,
all.
that sounds very valuable for sure. I think there are a lot of people who could use that type of, direction. Definitely. I will say, only you'll be able to see this because we don't actually show. Well, it's a stupid blurry thing. I have purchased your book. I am reading it. I am finding this very helpful.
Good.
Because the language you're using, I think is very much designed to be accessible, which is the opposite of, anything that was written more than 25 years ago, I would say. So if there's anybody listening to this who, you know, I purchased my own copy. Aaron does not pay this off in any way. But if there's anybody listening to this who's considering this, who's curious about it, I would throw that out there as, yeah, that actually is a good starting point in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yep, we'll definitely link that in the show notes.
For sure.
Um,
Appreciate that.
and you said you're working on a new book. So what's that book about?
So it's I mean it's still pretty new. I mean, it feels like as I'm writing it, I keep going off on different tangents, but basically, I'm trying to create a book that will help people to apply tarot to for themselves. So not really teach people how to read tarot for anyone else. It's just basically how to pull people in a direction that maybe they're in a rut right now, and so they need a little extra help, a little extra guidance. And so it's more about what tarot exercises um, they can do to help better their own lives and to put them on a brighter and better path. I mean, I really feel that, like I say, tarot is a tool for guidance. I mean, it's your tarot spread is kind of like a map of the question you're asking, or like the directions, and then the cards themselves is the compass. I mean, the thing can really, if you really get into it, it can do a lot of good in your life for guiding you out of those troubled times. But so the book, I keep going off on tangents with it, and I keep like, nah, I don't want to go that way, I don't want to go that way. So, I mean, I've already written over 1,000 words, just in the last week. That is completely new, and I've thrown out the previous 3,000 word before that. So it's like I just keep trying to go off on this, and I want it to be something that really can actually be beneficial and help people in guiding them on a better path. So. So it's more about the cards and their application to what it is about, like learning the cards.
Hmm. I like that. So it's like a tarot self-help book.
It really is. I mean, not going to be the name, but
Yeah.
yes, but yeah, it's going to be something more like that, and somehow can offer that guidance for the self. Because I really think that you can go and pay, and again, it's my little side hustle. I love reading cards. I love helping people, and it's fun. But the best tarot reading that you will ever get is the one that you give yourself.
Hmm.
So
I agree with that. I do readings sometimes, but mostly like I said, like Akashic Records readings rather than like card readings. But I feel so much better about empowering people to do this for themselves, because I think you're right. Like it is definitely more true, because we have our own lenses. Like you can see the cards and you can feel the energy of a reading, but there's things about me that you might not know that would apply to that situation. So if I'm reading the cards for myself, it's like I can get to almost a deeper layer.
right, yeah, absolutely, yeah. No one knows you better than yourself. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And also side note, as a fellow writer, don't actually throw out those words. They could be used for other books at some point.
Oh, they're in a folder. It was going
Good.
to full. Yeah, I paid for it.
Good. There was something you said in your answers that really stuck with me.
Sure.
You said, I believe every situation should be left better than you found it, and I bring this energy to my readings, which I just love. And I'm just curious about how do you bring that into your readings?
Sure. So, I mean, there's these, you know, especially new readers will get a little spooked by cards. You see the Tower card come up or the Devil, and it's like, oh no, and maybe the person's just like, hey, should I buy this card this weekend? And Tower and Devil, yeah, probably not. I mean, that seems bad. And I guess I try to leave each reading positive. I don't believe that there is any doom and gloom in any reading, because if nothing else, you are going to at least glean some sort of awareness before you leave the table or email I sent. If it's depending on how I read the card. So my reason for saying that is I don't ever let anyone leave unhappy. So to speak. I mean, you don't want to leave them, because otherwise they're not going to want a reading again. So if they're having a negative experience, then they're going to be like, well, that sucked. I don't want to do that again. And so I don't want that to be the energy that is given from a table. That being said, you don't want to sugarcoat it either. You don't want to you want to be direct, you want to be honest. But again, there's always a way of saying things in a positive light, I guess. So kind of keep it light. And so when you see the Tower and you see these things, it doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't go buy that car this weekend, but maybe there's another car you should be looking at right now, or maybe this isn't the weekend to go do that, or whatever reason. It's caution. It means caution. It doesn't mean no. It means you should maybe rethink this. So that's what I mean by try to leave every situation better than you found it. people you meet, leave them better than when they came to your table. And that just means, if you're delivering a no, this is probably not a good idea. Well, at least they have that insight, and it doesn't mean no forever. It just means no right now.
Yeah, it's like we're just talking about the possibilities. Nothing's set in stone. It's not, death, actual death, but
Absolutely.
yeah, it's like, let me help you expand what you're thinking about. It doesn't have to just be this one way, like you said. If it's not this car, well, then there's maybe a better car that's out there for you.
Sure. Yep. Exactly right.
Yeah. So where can people find you?
So I do have a website. They can find me at aarongafftarot.com. So I have all the links to all my social media on there. One day I will do a YouTube. I still have not done that yet, though. So yeah, it's all right there. I have links for my book. You can click on the link there to take to the Amazon, which is where my book is for sale. Yeah, you can go on that website, book a reading, or just ask me questions. I get that quite a bit. Yeah, it's all cool. You can find me there.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to share with us tonight?
I will. I listened to a few of your podcasts and I love the content. And so this is not tarot related, but it is an interesting story. And if it doesn't fit, you guys can cut this. But I grew up in an apple orchard in Larwell, and it was a pretty rural area. And my brother and I were really into comic books and horror, and we'd always like tell scary stories and ride late at night to the apple trees and stuff on our bikes. And but anyways, we were very spiritual. But my grandma and we had a pretty unique relationship. She was the person who primarily ran the grocery store at the front of this apple orchard. And there was this commercial randomly, and I can't tell you what it was for, but this commercial showed a young guy driving, and there's an older guy over here, and it just shows them in there, and the young guy looks at the older guy kind of wanting, and the old guy finally rolls his eyes and consents to what it was he was implying. And so the young guy pushes the tape player, and Queen's song "Another One Bites the Dust" begins to play. Well, the camera pans out of the car they're driving in, and they're driving a hearse, and it's in a funeral procession, and off they go. Okay, now I can't tell you the life of me what that commercial was selling, but I love that commercial, and my grandma and I used to laugh about it all the time. Well, a few years later, my grandma passed away, and so at her funeral, we get done with the viewing and all that, and we do the all stuff. It's a sad event. I love my grandma very much. I go to get in my van with my wife and my kids, and we're getting ready to go to the burial plot, and it wasn't an oldies day. It wasn't anything special at all. But as soon as we get in, we start the van and we start to go, Queen's "Another One Bites the Dust" as we follow my grandma to the funeral. And I do believe my grandma reaching out to me to try to make light of a sad situation.
He sure was. That's a
wild.
great story. Thank you for sharing that with us. I love it.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And very in line with a bunch of things a bunch of people have told us. That makes a lot of sense based on a lot of what we're collecting here.
Yeah. Yep. So did Grandma have a sense of humor?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
She was.
I can tell.
She was very ornery. Miss her very much. But I had a great relationship with her and both my grandparents. Honestly, they were both very funny, very loving people, and had the apple orchard for 38 years in a little small town called Larwell, Indiana. And it was a great place. So good time.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, man. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a great one. All right. Well, we have enjoyed this conversation very much. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us and share all your wisdom with us. It's been very interesting, and you've given me some things to think about for sure.
Well, I really appreciate this. It's a great experience, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. If you have a strange story you want to share with us, email us at seekerandskeptic@gmail.com. We look forward to talking to you soon.